Sponsored in part by TD Ameritrade.
We're back, and you're watching the opening bells, which are going to ring in 5 seconds. So there's no time for chit-chat.
Nope.
Here at the big board, it's MF Global. Formerly Man Financial, celebrating its IPO today under ticker MF. And at the NASDAQ, another IPO, Limco Piedmont, an aerospace parts supplier, ticker LIMC.
I cannot wait to see how MF is going to open. Not open
They
yet.
didn't send me a hat, but MF Global did. Also, somebody named Natezis gave
They're
us
going public
mugs.
today, too.
Yeah,
Mugs
where?
with chocolates.
Anyway,
Mugs
they
with
are a
chocolates.
provider of enterprise data warehouse appliances, etc. Very nice mug, people at Natezza.
That's right, they did.
Bernanke beginning his second day of testimony before Congress. Let's get to Hampton Pearson on the Hill, who is parsing today's statement to see if the comma might have been moved. Hampton.
No change in the prepared testimony, Mark. No changes in punctuation. Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke about to tell the Senate Banking Committee that basically, as he looks at the economy and monetary policy over the last 6 months, it is housing that's frankly the biggest drag on the overall economy in terms of less than expected growth. Also, the biggest short-term concern as far as inflation are skyrocketing energy prices, and he's really worried, number one, if those prices become, his words, embedded in the economy, and more importantly, embedded in the minds of consumers, as perhaps them curtailing consumer spending in the coming months because of high energy costs. As far as core inflation, the Fed looking for 2 to 2.25% this year, the same as its forecast 6 months ago. Overall economic growth, 2.25% to 2.5% from the fourth quarter of last year to this year. That's down slightly from the forecast of 6 months ago. No hints of any change coming as far as monetary policy, and specifically as far as the Senate Banking Committee is concerned, Mark, look for Senate Banking Committee Chairman Chris Dodd to press Chairman Bernanke on what the Fed is doing as far as the whole subprime mortgage meltdown. Yes, praise for the steps the Fed is taking as far as perhaps cracking down on mortgage brokers and more consumer protection. But again, that'll be a particular focus of Banking Committee Chairman Chris Dodd.
Who, of course, is running for president.
Hey.
Right. Thank you, Hampton Pearson.
You're welcome.
All right. Now, I want to just, before we go to our market reporters here, especially given that Ben Bernanke is going to be taking questions, all right?
Yeah.
And people are going to be asking him about the housing market and the subprime market and all of these. Okay. Harley Davidson, ticker HOG. We know, obviously, this is a company that people look at as a barometer of the consumer because it's often people buy a motorcycle as a second, a fun vehicle, right?
Yeah, I buy one all the time.
Right. All right. Well, it's down almost 1.2%. Harley Davidson coming out. This is just the one headline that I think is very relevant, calling the consumer credit environment challenging. They're talking about rising delinquency rates and credit losses. They do have a financing arm at Harley Davidson, but everyone's been talking about when are we going to start to see delinquency rates go up. A company like Harley Davidson, you've got fairly highly priced motorcycles in there, right?
Yeah.
You're not talking about a low-end issue here
No,
with consumer credit.
these are not
You're talking about
low-end.
delinquencies on a much higher end, and that is why potentially this is something that could be more significant. Just another data point. We saw the headline. We want to make sure you see
Delinquencies on your Harley payment?
Yes, that's why I think it's significant.
Wow, because they're
Interesting.
awfully easy to repossess. It doesn't take a lot to repossess a motorcycle.
All right, well, let's get to our market reporters here. Bob Pisani's with us on the floor. Bob?
Hello, let's talk to the folks from MF Global. These are the futures and options brokerage arm of Man Group, which is based in London. Let's talk here. Kevin David, he's the CEO. Amy Butte is the CFO. Kevin, let me talk to you first here. Brokerage and options business folks are going to participate in a great old story here, and that is going to open and trade the very first stock, so they're going to have to run. Thanks for coming by. I appreciate that, folks. Here's what's happening today and what's really important. Bank of America came out with earnings better than expected, but they took provisions for loan losses, and of course that's important overall here. Warehousing slowdown stuff. Vulcan Materials also had some commentary. It's down 5%. Honeywell's big buyback is the big story of the morning. 6% of the company. That's up rather nicely here. Let's go to Rebecca Jarvis. She's standing by over at the NASDAQ.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I want to take a look at Clearwire shares getting a big bounce this morning, jointly developing a nationwide broadband network with Sprint. You see the shares up 31.1% right now. Dell shares also up about 1%, announcing that it is continuing its IT simplification strategy with an acquisition of Silverback Technologies. You have SunPower, on the other hand, increasing its liquidity, a $2.5 million share offering, and the shares are off now 3%. You also have eBay down on its earnings news. The big question here is the decline in listings, even though profits were up 50%. Google, of course, they report after the bell, up about 0.5%. Mark Haynes, back to you.
Thank you very much. We are back above 14,000 in spades. 14,008.
We are. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. Up next, Randy Bateman. He's Chief Investment, thank you, Officer of
Let's keep moving. There
Huntington Funds. He's reaping rewards in
Farming stocks.
right down Aaron's alley. Farming stocks.
All right, and then two big names on Wall Street are going to sound off on subprime. One talking about the cockroach theory. You know, you see those cockroaches, Mark? You see how there's not just one?
Yeah.
Because there's never just one.
I know.
You should have learned that lesson with Lucent, people. All right, we're going to be back with that in a moment. All right, well, we're going to continue our market check with oil and bonds since we've got the Dow up almost 100. Oil, though, not holding it back. Sharon Epperson, what are you seeing there?
Well, definitely we're seeing higher energy prices across the board. You know, we've seen a record level of open interest, a record number of speculative longs, of hedge funds going long in this market. That is part of what's...
Thanks, Sharon. Well, the dollar's a bit weaker against most currencies, as at least defined by the dollar index. We see interest rates have ticked up a bit. There's not as much angst about things like subprime. And speaking of subprime, you've heard about this subprime index.
Thank you very much, Rick Santelli. Our next guest says short term, the market needs to come back a bit. Long term, he's still bullish. What? What kind of stuff is that, Randy Bateman? Chief Investment Officer, Huntington Funds, Portfolio Manager of the 4-star Morningstar rated Huntington Citus Small Cap Fund. Fund up close to 17% year to date. Has an annualized return of over 20% on the 3-year period. So he must know what he's doing, but it sure sounds wishy-washy to me. What do you mean come back short term, bullish long term? I think you're trying to have your cake
This
and egg.
business is wishy-washy, I'm telling you. There's no question about it. No, we think it's due for a pullback. I mean, there's a lot of bad news out there, but long term, if you just look at the supply-demand patterns, the demand for securities is going to stay high. There's no alternatives. There's nobody.
Huntington Citus Small Cap. I'm sorry, a very small person just gave us a camera cue. Go ahead, Sarah Lyon.
A very small, very good-looking person, I believe, related to Mr. Bateman. All right, up next, the favor report. Plus, Genco shipping spending $1 billion to almost double their dry bulk fleet. Find out how you can get in on the action when you come sail away with a supersized Squawk on the Street.
You're watching CNBC's Squawk on the Street, live from the financial capital of the world.
You are looking live right now at a Senate committee hearing meeting where Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke is struggling desperately to stay awake as he is waiting here to start his second day of testimony on Capitol Hill. But as you know, the senators on the committee have to make their opening statements. And Bernanke has to sit there and look like it all makes sense to him. When the Fed chairman starts taking questions, we will bring you there live. In the meantime.
He does look a little bored.
Oh, come on. He's got to be. Are you kidding? That's agony. He's got to sit there and pretend that these men are saying intelligent things.
And then when he comes on, it's like scintillation central.
Yeah. All right. Concerns over the subprime shakeout continuing to impact financial stocks. Earlier today on